Hello, my friends. In the heart of green nature, there was a forest known as the Laughing Forest. This name was not just a metaphor, but the trees in it swayed and made sounds similar to laughter. Even the birds and animals participated in this cheerful atmosphere. Every morning, the sun rose and flooded the earth with its golden rays, and the little creatures began to move and work in unparalleled harmony and harmony. The inhabitants of the Laughing Forest were not just animals and birds, but the forest was home to magical creatures that humans had never seen before. The little fairies, with their transparent wings that reflected the sunlight, moved between the flowers and spread happiness everywhere. There were also other larger and greater creatures, such as flying deer and rabbits that could talk. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Laila. Laila lived in a small village near the forest, and she always heard stories about it, but she did not believe everything that was said. She thought that the forest was just an ordinary place, like any other forest. But her curiosity began to grow as the days passed, and one day she decided to take an adventure and explore that mysterious forest. Laila took her small bag and put some food and water in it and set off towards the forest. When she reached the entrance of the forest, she felt something strange. The air was different, the smells were stronger, and the sounds of the birds were closer to being harmonious music. She took the first step into the forest, and suddenly she felt that the world around her had changed. The trees seemed to breathe, and the flowers were moving gently as if welcoming her. Laila began to explore more and more, and the further she went, the more she discovered new things. She saw a river flowing slowly, and around it were small creatures playing and singing. Laila approached the river, and suddenly she heard a voice saying, "Welcome to the Laughing Forest." Laila looked around, but she saw no one. The voice repeated, "We are here, behind the flowers." Laila bent down and looked closely, and she saw small fairies with shiny wings smiling at her. I will continue the story in the next part and complete the development of events and adventures that Laila will experience in the Laughing Forest. Text 2. Laila stood in amazement as she stared at the little fairies. She couldn't believe her eyes. Those magical creatures were fluttering their shiny wings over the flowers and laughing gently. One of them approached, holding a small shiny flower in her hand, and said in a soft voice, "I am Lena, the leader of the fairies here. What brought you to our Laughing Forest?" Laila smiled cautiously and replied, "I am Lena, and I have heard a lot about your magical forest. I wanted to see it for myself." The fairies laughed, and Lena said, "So, you are here at the right time. Today is the big celebration day, the day when all the forest dwellers gather to celebrate the 100th anniversary of peace in our forest." Laila couldn't hide her excitement and asked Lena to take her to the celebration place. Lena raised a small stick made of a tree branch and pointed to the sky, and suddenly light paths appeared in the air, leading them to the middle of the forest. Laila walked behind the fairies, capturing every scene with her eyes in amazement and admiration. The deeper she went into the forest, the more wondrous creatures she saw. Giant birds singing melodious tunes, rabbits playing by the edges of the streams, and deer with golden horns moving nimbly through the trees. Everything in the forest seemed to be alive. When Laila arrived at the celebration square, she found a magical scene unlike anything she had ever seen before. The square was filled with creatures of all kinds, fairies flying through the air and decorating the trees with magical colors, and other creatures dancing and singing in perfect harmony. In the center of the square, there was a giant tree as high as the sky, its leaves glowing with rainbow colors, and it was the center around which all the activities revolved. Laila approached the giant tree and asked Lena, "What is the story of this tree? It is amazing." Lena replied, "This is the tree of life, the center of the forest and the source of its energy. Hundreds of years ago, the elders of the forest planted it to maintain balance and peace here. Every 100 years, we celebrate together to renew this promise between us and nature." But amidst this happy atmosphere, Laila noticed something strange. There were shadows moving quietly behind the trees, as if they were watching what was happening. Laila tried to ignore it and enjoy the celebration, but a feeling of anxiety began to creep into her heart. Suddenly, the magical lights that filled the place went out, and silence reigned. Laila looked around and saw that all the creatures had stopped moving, as if something unnatural was happening. A huge creature appeared from the shadows. It looked like a wolf, but its eyes were burning with intense anger. It advanced towards the celebration square, and in a deep and terrifying voice it said, "It's been a long time since I last visited the Laughing Forest, but that time is over. I will restore things to their rightful place." Part 3. Laila felt her heart beating fast, but she realized that she couldn't escape like the others. She looked around and found that Lena and the fairies were hiding behind the trees, while Kasser, the master of shadows, stood staring at her as if she was a challenge to overcome. The air was getting colder, and the forest that was bustling with life moments ago was now covered in a terrifying silence. With a voice full of courage, Laila said, "I won't let you destroy this forest. If you think you can take over this land, you are mistaken." Kasser laughed sarcastically. "You are just a little girl. What can you do? This forest is mine by force, and you have no power to change that." But Laila knew that the forest wasn't just a place. It contained secrets and hidden energies. She decided to ask Lena what she could do. She looked towards Lena, who was trembling behind a tree, and asked her, "Is there a way to stop him?" Lena stepped forward fearfully and whispered, "The tree. The tree is the source of life and energy. If we can reach the heart of the tree, we can stop the breaker. But it is not easy. The tree protects itself, and no creature can reach its heart easily." Fourth and final text. After the atmosphere in the Laughing Forest calmed down and peace returned to it, Laila found herself among new friends who were indescribably grateful to her. They celebrated with her all night under the giant tree that had regained its full magical energy. The fairies fluttered around it, singing songs and lighting up the sky with enchanting colors. Laila felt an inner peace that she had never known before, as if the forest itself was thanking her for what she had given. The next morning, Laila woke up to the sunlight gently filtering through the leaves of the trees. Lena approached her and said with a smile, "It's time for you to return to your village, Laila. You've done your part here, but your true place is there, among your people." Laila nodded. She knew that leaving wouldn't be easy. but she felt that this experience had changed her forever. Before she left, Lena gave her a small gift, a necklace made of the leaves of the giant tree, with a small stone glowing gently in the middle. This necklace will always remind you of us, of the laughing forest, said Lena. And if you ever need us, just touch the stone and we'll be there for you. Laila took the gift gratefully and wore it around her neck. She felt that the necklace had a special power, but she didn't know what it was yet. She said goodbye to her friends, the fairies, the talking rabbits, the flying deer, and all the creatures who shared her adventure. Laila walked towards the edge of the forest, but before she left, she looked back one last time. She saw the forest as bright and beautiful as ever, and even more so. She knew she would return one day, but now it was time to go home. When Laila emerged from the forest and returned to her village, she felt a strange sense of peace. She was no longer just the curious little girl, but a grown-up person with a unique experience inside her. As soon as she arrived in the village, everyone noticed a change in Laila. Her face was radiant, and her eyes shone with a wisdom that hadn't been there before. The villagers gathered around her and asked her about her journey in the forest. Laila began to tell her story, talking about the magical creatures, the giant tree, and the battle she fought against the Shadow Breaker. The story was amazing, and people listened to her in amazement, but only a few believed all the details. As the days passed, Laila became a symbol of courage and wisdom in her village. She no longer felt fear or doubt as she used to. Whenever she looked at the necklace around her neck, she remembered the moments she lived in the Laughing Forest, and she felt that a part of her was still there, with her fairy friends. One day, while she was walking in the fields near her village, she touched the necklace without realizing it. Suddenly, she felt a light breeze coming from the direction of the forest, and she heard a familiar voice saying, "We are here, Laila."
When Laila returned to Earth, she found herself by the pond in the moon garden. The magic path had disappeared, but her heart was filled with happiness and peace. She returned home thinking about the adventure she had lived, and slept that night feeling satisfied because she had helped a little friend get back to her place. Since then, Laila looked up at the sky every night, searching for the star that had helped her. Every time she saw it, she felt warm in her heart, knowing that the star was there to light her way, just as Laila had done for her. And so the story of Laila and the star ended, but the friendship between them continued to shine every night in the sky. And so, dear viewer, the story has ended. Goodbye, and see you tomorrow with a new story.